Hey everyone, welcome back to episode number 2 of our mini series here at Lumix, where we're discussing all things events and events marketing. Just as a quick recap, we're Lumix and we help global brands who are running events deliver those events at better ROI, which is what we're discussing today. We do that through a mix of some unbeatable rates with our global network of vetted suppliers, and a all-in-one platform where you can source, manage and contract with those suppliers, saving you the hassle of those multiple Google Sheets and Drive folders that you're so accustomed to using. But yeah, before we get going, for those that didn't see episode 1, I'd like to welcome back Mark. Hey Mark, how are you?
Hi Lawrence, great to see you again.
Yeah, good, thanks. So can you give a quick intro as to who you are, who you work for, because
Sure.
you're not just nobody.
Very happy to be a CMO advisor to Lumix. I think they're going to be changing the game for event marketers around the world. My background is I've spent my career in technology, IBM, Microsoft, Adobe, and more recently Cisco in global marketing roles. So I've seen most of the things that are happening in marketing, from digital to events to AI to the whole thing. So hopefully I can give some pearls of wisdom and help you in your challenges, because it's fantastic being in marketing, but there's never been a more challenging time to be in marketing with the rise of AI and all the things you need to keep up with and proving return on investment that we'll get into in this episode.
Indeed. Well, let's start there, shall we? We've mentioned it a couple of times, return on investment. This is what we're going to be talking about today. So I think it makes sense to start with, well, two things. One, can we, between us, define what we think ROI means and the common definition? And then two, and probably one we're both used to, is why we feel it's the most commonly asked question by our friends over in finance. Can you prove ROI, please?
Yes, it is one of the most common questions. So, return on investment. Your inputs, what are you investing in your event? And for me, that is all the aspects of the event. The physical event, the pre, during, post, all the marketing of an event, all the support. Because I see an event as part of an overall campaign timeline. I hate the idea of events being one-off scenarios. All right, so that's all your investment into that, and that's all the digital and physical, etc. And then the return, what is that return? In the most basic sense, some people say the number of people attending the event is the return. Not a really good answer from my perspective in terms of the return, because for me, the ultimate return is what dollars or what revenue are we driving out of that event. The challenge there is that happens over 6, 12, 2 years after that event. And so what you've got to do is effectively come up with a measure that's going to have credibility with the CFO. I love the idea of looking at pipeline. How much pipeline was represented at the event? How much new pipeline was generated? And how much of that existing pipeline was accelerated through the event? That has real credibility with the CFO, because that's the same language that sales uses. Okay? And in addition, you should also talk about how did we improve the engagement with our customers, okay? A little more fluffy, and that impacts the brand value over time, but a combination of those things, because it's our job as marketers to not only inform CFOs, but educate CFOs as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think what their expectation perhaps is like input, profit and loss sheet. We put X into the event and we got X out of it.
Yeah.
Which is difficult, especially when it comes to events. We're not measuring a online channel like Google Ads, Meta Ads, anything like that, where you mentioned it's 6, 12, 18 months from the point that someone might have attended our event to where they're actually having an impact on that bottom line. Do you find it harder to measure ROI in the events world versus other channels that we're used to dialing up and down?
Sure, it's harder than, say, digital, where you just mentioned one of them, Google search, etc. It's very, you put X in and you get Y out. But it's still possible because, at Cisco, we use this engagement metric, and we could measure how engaged each of our customers were. And we made that into a predictive analytics scenario where we could say if a customer was significantly engaged, they're much more likely to drive X volume of revenue. Okay, attending an event was one of the key factors of whether they were significantly engaged or not, right? If they just do digital engagement and never attend a physical event, okay, they're probably not going to be that significantly engaged, because to get customers to be really loyal customers and ultimately to be advocates of you, you've got to engage with them beyond digital, in my view. So that's where events come in.
Okay, so if we've talked about pipeline engagement, I guess we're already touching on some of the metrics. When we run an event as marketers, we have probably got a list of things that we're looking to measure. ROI doesn't simply come down to that two spreadsheet line scenario. There's lots more going into it. Have you got any kind of go-to metrics that as a marketer, when we're planning our events, we should be looking to keep an eye on beyond just that bottom line ROI?
Yes, cost per lead. Okay, how much are you spending on the overall event and what sort of new leads are you getting out of that event? That's really important, because you can spend a lot of money and not get many leads, and your cost per lead is going to be outrageous, right? And so then the pipeline metric that I measured and discussed earlier. And then finally, what is the engagement of your customers? Is it moving the relationship with your customers forward? All right. So those three scenarios are really, really important. And then I suppose, how is the cost effectiveness of your event versus other events that you've done, or versus industry best practice? All right. You should also look at that, because you've got to make sure your event is compelling, that it's cost effective, and it's driving results. They're the three things that you need to think about.
I don't suppose, for our listeners, you've got any idea of a benchmark for that cost per lead metric? Do you have a sense of what was too high, what was too low, and what was just about right?
Oh, look, it so differs by company and what stage you're at. Where Cisco might do, let me think, an average deal size might be $1 million. Okay. So, if you spend $50,000 on a lead that results in $1 million, transaction, you'd say, okay, that's quite good. But if your average deal size is, I don't know, $50,000, if you're spending $50,000 on a lead, that's not good, right? So I think it actually you should look at what your average deal size is, and then that cost per lead should be in the realm of 5% of that if a lead results in a sale.
Okay, that's a nice little benchmark, that 5% there. Beyond those, I guess, harder metrics, did you look at anything to measure in the events world? Return on objective and return on experience, I guess ROO and ROE are two commonly mentioned metrics, and they're probably more softer in the sense that you're looking to figure out, did my attendees engage well with the content that was on the event? Did our team perform in line with the criteria we set out? Did you measure those sorts of things as well?
It's so important to get feedback from your customers, and we would make that customer feedback easy and fun to do, because you've got to ensure we would always get every session rated by our customers. And because that's such good input for how do we do the event differently next time, right? Because, the customers are the best guide of what you should be doing here. And also, because all that generation of content from the event will be used for the next 6 or 12 months, that feedback also focuses us in on what content we should really focus on going forward from the event. So we do a lot of that stuff. In terms of overall metrics on return on experience, etc., not so much, more the fact of how did this move our engagement metrics forward, right? Because we already had those in place for all the customers attending, and we'd measure how that moved them forward, right? Pipeline, experience, and engagement.
Got it. Okay, so we can get onto the nitty gritty in a second then of how do we actually go and calculate and show the results to a finance team, or, for our own benefit too. But I'm interested in all the constituent parts that allowed you and anyone listening, what do they need to be tracking in order to accurately measure the things that we've discussed? Did you, well, let's start with costs. What would you put under the umbrella of the cost the cost required to put on an event?
Okay, everything directly involved with the event. Okay, so all the physical setup of the event, all the costs of speakers, all the costs of technical support and marketing support, all the costs of promoting the event, all the campaign costs of pre, during, and after, all the content generation. So really everything to do with the event, we would pile in there.
An interesting one there, the supporting campaign costs. Did you therefore, any spend on promoting that event that was on digital channels, whatever that may be, that also went into that line of the event rather than the line of that channel, as it were?
No, exactly. It went into that event. Of course, it would still remain part of the campaign cost center as well. But in order for us to show the return on investment of that particular event, you need to put all those elements in. Otherwise, you're underestimating what the cost of that event is for you.
Did you go granular on the people cost at all? Or was there more of a central operations line for people costs?
That's more of a central operations line for people costs. I mean, unless you're regarding the people involved directly in running the events and all that sort of stuff, of course they're allocated to the event line. But, all the other guest speakers from the company who come along, that wasn't allocated into the event because that's just, in my view, sunk costs for your business, right? All those marketing and sales people and technical people you have presenting at the event, I think it would be unfair to put all those into the event because it's not as if you're going to fire all those people, right? Going forward, they're part of the sunk costs of your business.
Yeah, okay. Good to clarify.
A good point, actually, because I always think of that as fixed and variable costs. In a reasonable way, people costs are pretty fixed, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're going to have a retrenchment or whatever.
Okay, so we've covered the cost of the event or the campaign spend going into that. Now, I guess we need to cover the other side of it, is like, what are we getting out of that event? And for me, I think the first thing, and where often people go wrong, is they're not even tracking who's attending. We put all of that effort into marketing this event, getting the speakers, getting the suppliers, booking the venue, and we've done an email marketing campaign, we've raised awareness on social, we've got all of these leads in our CRM, but who's actually attending? I'm going to definitely assume you measured that.
Well, absolutely, and you're right, because I think sometimes people are exhausted by the time the event comes because they've been working really hard to prepare this incredible experience, right? But there's more to it than that. You need to have joint planning prior to the event with sales, okay? And you need to think about who the target audience for the event are and jointly go after getting those customers, the right customers, to the event, all right? And once you get those customers to the event, you need to ensure that it's not just an event where they listen to speakers, but there's sales engagement. The example I gave, I think in the last episode, was Adobe, whereby we would have a central hub for the salespeople, and a typical salesperson might have 12 meetings a day with customers or 15 meetings a day, and customers would be able to request meetings with their salespeople and vice versa. So there were thousands of meetings between customers and our salespeople at the event. All right. So that's a really, really important thing, because then it becomes a joint exercise. Okay. It's not just a marketing event, it's a sales and marketing event, which makes it far more measurable, far more appreciated by the CFO that we were speaking about earlier. And another tip, if you have trouble getting your CFO over the line, get the CFO to present at the event on some topic targeting chief financial officers or something. There's nothing better than getting a CFO engaged and involved in the event for them to fully understand what the value is.
Yeah, I like the point of the alignment between sales and marketing. And I think you unpicked the two things in there. One, we know we're tracking who's attending, but beyond that, we're also tracking of the attendees who's actually booking in those meetings, attending those sessions on the day. Were you sending signals like that back to your CRM?
Absolutely, we would do that. We would send that back to the CRM, and we would, at Cisco, be able to measure each customer to determine how significantly engaged they were. All right. So we would then inform sales and say, customer XYZ, there's these 200 customers, right, who are significantly engaged. We can get more revenue from those customers. So you should engage with them at the event. Or there's these early warning customers. We think they're in danger of leaving the Cisco fold and going with a competitor because the signals are bad. Make sure you meet with them at the event and turn them around.
Okay, a quite sophisticated system there for
Well,
identifying.
very. I mean, it was like cutting edge, and it sort of changed the game between sales and marketing because marketing had sort of more information than the salespeople did.
As a baseline for anyone listening that might not quite be at the level of technical investment as Adobe, I would say maybe rule number one, make sure you've got technology like a Cvent or Eventbrite or something that's measuring those attendees and get that data back into your CRM and using workflows in there. Then you can kind of make sure that customer X attended an event, yes or no, okay, we're somehow being able to distinguish those that attended, those that didn't, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can do this in a much more simple way, right? You've got to engage with your salespeople and think about who you want at the event, who's important for your salespeople to engage with, and you facilitate that, right? And you can do that with people and with simple tools.
Okay, so if we've established a baseline of, whether you're at Adobe level and you're got this really nice, every marketer probably dreams of way of figuring out who and what we should be talking about to certain people within our CRM who are attending events versus, just starting out. We're tracking people, but that's about it. One question I have is someone that attends an event doesn't just attend an event and buy. Their buying journey through discovery to purchase is going to cover a whole host of channels.
Yes.
How did you determine to open a can of worms, attribute the impact of the event versus all those other touch points that they may have had?
Yes, it is somewhat of a can of worms. We use Salesforce as our CRM system. And in the most basic sense, you should, before an event, analyze your pipeline and determine with sales which of those people in your CRM system you want at the event. And that should be your target, right? You won't get them all, but you might get 60%. That gives you great credibility with the CFO as well because they know about that pipeline that sales is tracking. So if you can appeal to that, we would then score each of those touch points customers had with us and we'd give a value to those. So an event, physical event where you turn up and you download white papers and you meet with the sales, you might get a high engagement score for that versus just downloading a white paper online, a much lower engagement score. So all that would go into the model to determine how engaged that particular customer was. And once they passed a threshold, we could make it predictive about versus other customers, how much revenue should they be spending with Cisco, for example.
Yeah, again, I'm imagining then we're in the world of a nice econometric mixed media modeling.
Yes.
You've got your own data and model to weight everything accordingly.
It is, but like your point about econometrics is really important because I recommend everyone should look at econometrics modeling. You can get companies to help you with this, even if you're a reasonably small company, to help you determine, okay, what should be my marketing mix based on that modeling, because otherwise it's kind of a finger in the air type thing, so.
Yeah, and as someone that's probably worked on the other side to you at those smaller companies, there are even, with the advancements in, data and AI in the past 5-10 years, you can go and download custom Python libraries from Google, from wherever.
Yeah.
They have these packages ready for you to kind of plug and play almost, and then amend. So it's it's accessible as well. You mentioned going and paying a agency or whatever to do that econometric scoring. That's one option, but I definitely think another one, if you've got a strong data team as well, is investigating what might be open source out there to start yourselves.
It's really interesting the point you make though, Lawrence. My experience was a lot of people don't have strong data teams. It always shocked me because my view is 5 to 10% of your marketing organization should be in data and analytics, etc. And I often didn't see that, even with quite large companies. They were fully reliant on agencies, which really worried me because to be successful in marketing, you need to understand the numbers, and it's the art and the science, right? And the science is becoming more relevant than ever before.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. I think it's been really insightful to kind of look at both ends of the scale, see how Adobe are doing it, some advice for if you're just starting out in the events world. Hopefully our listeners have taken away some inspiration and some bits of insight. I want to close the loop and bring it back lastly to our friends over in finance, and any snippets and wise words of wisdom that you can give to get them on side and communicate with them effectively if you really believe in your event strategy.
Put yourself in their shoes. Get rid of marketing acronyms. You know, the problem is marketing traditionally among some people is regarding the fluffy department that chose the color of the logos, right? In the worst case scenario, you need to show the finance people that you understand the data better than sales. And you understand it as well as they do. If you can speak in sales and business language to a CFO, they will get it. You talk about pipeline, okay? You talk about pipeline growth. You talk about how engage your customers and how we can predict, what customers are going to do and how we're helping sales drive their revenue targets. And here's how we're doing it. And by the way, Mr. CFO, we could do with your help because we think we should be spending more on marketing. And if you invest more in this, here's the return that we expect the company will get. Okay? And then, like I said, invite them to the event, get them involved in it, right? Get them running a session targeting CFOs on, the return on investment on marketing, right? Get them involved in it. And in my experience, they're smart people. And if you can speak to them in their language and show them what the business impact is, you'll not only build credibility for marketing, but for yourself and your career as well.
Thank you very much, Mark. Again, it's been a pleasure talking, and I'll join you for episode number 3 in a week's time.
Excellent, Lawrence. Thank you. Hope everyone enjoyed it.
Bye now.
Bye.